Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today Television. I'm Sakshi Batra and this is BTS, that's Behind the Scenes, a show where we share a sneak peek into the latest edition of the Business Today magazine with all our viewers. Joining in on the show with me, I'm two of my special colleagues, Krishna Gopalan join in. Now, he is the executive editor of Business Today magazine. Also, Danny D. Cruz is joining in. He is the assistant editor, works on all the tech-related stories for the magazine as well. Welcome to both of you and thank you so much for taking the time out. And now to showcase a glimpse to all our viewers of this latest edition. There you have it. We have Amazon on the cover. And the story is to find out Amazon's India master plan, how the strategy has been working in for this global giant in India over the past decade and what could be coming next for this e-commerce giant as well. And Krishna here has got to speak with Manish Tiwari. He's the country manager of Amazon India. Krishna, let's kickstart with you. It's been a decade for Amazon in India. Do tell us, how is it now positioned, how has the growth trajectory been, and also especially how the India strategy has worked for the company.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Sakshi. Yes, they entered India in 2013. It's been a full decade. I must straight away make a difference between Amazon and what some of its peers have done. Most importantly, the approach has been completely organic. They've had absolutely no buyout in India. So the whole process of building the business ground up is something that's kind of stood out, made Amazon so different in India. We've had complete access to the fulfillment center. So we saw the supply chain operation from very close quarters. We spent time with Manish, the big boss of Amazon in India, the consumer business. We also spent time with the other folks in senior management to get a bird's eye view into Amazon Pay and also what the shopping experience is all about. A couple of things stand out instantaneously. I think fundamentally the access to technology that they've had globally and bringing that to India has been quite remarkable. But again, that said, the big difference is not so much of bringing it to India, but making it adaptable to an Indian context. I'm just going to pick out a few points, a few instances to drive home the point here. When they came to India, the data piece of the telecom story was still a little unknown. We were still in a 2G and barely graduating to a 3G story in India. So the app to that extent had to be substantially reduced to have a lighter version and made very, very simple for Indian context. They couldn't have too many applications on the app, for example. So they went about that very differently. Cash on delivery was a concept that Flipkart ushered in. So Amazon pretty much took off from there. But the whole idea of setting up the business in terms of creating a very robust seller base. Let's understand one thing. They started with 0 sellers pretty much when they came in 2013. And that number stands at 14 lakhs today. So across product categories, you could be sitting in some part of, let's say, the remotest part of India. You could sit there, you could order something off the Amazon website, and that's exactly where technology made such a big difference. So to move to 14 lakhs, and the desire, that number could easily perhaps take off by 2.5 to 3x from where we are today. So Manish Tiwari made it absolutely clear to us, regardless of how many years Amazon spends in India, the backbone will continue to be the small seller. So I think that's a clear takeaway for us as far as story is concerned, because the whole idea is to get in the user, entice him with such a remarkable set of product offerings, and then ensure that he's there for life. So the stickiness factor is something they worked on. If all that has to fall into place, you need to get it right on tech, you need to get it right on user experience, and if that, again, to elaborate, if that again has to fall into place, your supply chain has to be second to none.
Absolutely, Krishna. And you know, as a regular e-commerce user and especially a constant user of Amazon, even I can share that I think the one thing that probably differentiates Amazon from its peers and gives it that edge is its absolute smooth customer experience as well. Whether it comes to grievances, returns, exchanges, that is where, the other places you get a put off in, but Amazon has been right there addressing all the concerns very, very quickly on that front as well. But, what will continue to help Amazon to probably stay ahead of competition? Are there any places where it still lags behind and wants to work next?
There are a couple of challenges. For example, the quick commerce part of obviously is one thing that comes to mind. More specifically, when you look at the likes of Blinkit and Zepto, Amazon has been a little circumspect on that one, if I may say so, because the whole idea of getting it right in a 30-minute delivery means your dark stores have to be completely up to it. It's not as if they're not interested in doing it. The point is with Amazon, quality levels are so high, they will want to get it right every time. They have Amazon Fresh, for example, where you can sit right now, ask for delivery later in the evening or first thing in the morning. But that still pales in comparison compared to a Blinkit who can perhaps deliver a washing powder in the next 35 minutes or 40 minutes at your residence. That part is still being worked on. It's very clear that India is gravitating towards the era of quick commerce. So for them to leave that door wide open, especially when they've got the rest of the piece right on e-commerce, is something they can scarcely afford to miss. But they have to get that right. But that again would call for a serious overhaul of the tech backend. They'll have to do a lot of things right. It's a tough one, but I think they have to get it right. Amazon Fresh is a good start, but for the Indian consumer, if you're being used to a situation where something lands in your apartment 30 minutes from the time you click the yes button, they'll have to up the game on that. So that part is fine, but I'd still put my money on it simply because the tech backend is there. They've made a commitment of investing over $25 billion in the Indian landscape across its businesses. If all that is there with the plethora of pin codes, the fact that seller user base is there, I'd put my money on them getting it right on quick commerce at some point.
Absolutely. But you know, the other point that comes to mind, Krishna, is going forward from here, how is the journey going to be? Of course, the first mover advantage or the global experience was something that worked as an advantage to Amazon thus far. But now we are also looking at news buzz of Indian giants like Reliance Industries, Adani, also jumping into this same space as well. So there'll be a lot more competitive intensity going forward, and fight for that market share as well. What will be the need of the hour? And of course, is there enough and more growth opportunity for such giants as well?
It's actually quite right when you ask that, but let's be clear about this. E-commerce penetration in India is still at a very low single-digit number as we speak. So the headroom for growth is quite phenomenal in that sense. To assume that this is going to be a market filled with just 2 or 3 players, I think is a little foolhardy. Yeah. To my mind, I think people will identify their niches. They will look at areas of strength. They will exploit that to the fullest. The model in each case is different. If you look at Jio, for instance, they have an existing telecom backbone. Yeah. So they use that very, very well. Combine that with the JioMart app. Amazon has nothing of that sort. But on the contrary, they have the Amazon Prime, where you can watch movies, pick up your groceries, order some food and get all of that. So the ability to get in a consumer from a B2C perspective, the moment you get that right, then for you to widen the depth and the width of the product offering gets that much easier. So this may seem a little odd, but I think within each pocket in India, it may not be unusual to have, let's say, 10 to 12 different e-commerce companies as long as they find a niche. Nobody thought of quick commerce as being a robust business proposition. But Zomato, courtesy Blinkit, has shown the way that there is a way to do it. You can service a particular pin code within a pin code. So I think we're going to have niches, we're going to have sub-markets within markets emerging, specific segments emerging. So I think the headroom for growth and the fact that the next 10 years is going to be remarkably filled with action is beyond anyone's doubt or comprehension, if I may say so.
Absolutely, Krishna. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that insight. This definitely calls for a wide audience understanding of how the e-commerce play is going to be looking like over the next 5-10 years or so. Let's now also shift focus from one app to the world of apps, or the app Play Store as we call it. Remember that a lot of us are used to of downloading apps only from 2 places, and that is either Apple if you're an Apple user or an iOS user, or the Google Play Store if you're an Android user as well. But because this space is just guarded by these 2 giants, there is enough and more talk now starting to happen about having our own, India's own app store. Now, why is this being thought about, and what could this mean going forward from here? Danny has written an entire fantastic piece on this too. So Danny, first up, just to give us a context to all our viewers, why exactly is there a talk about having an Indian app store to begin with?
Hi, Sakshi. Thank you for having me here. And yeah, there has always been talk about an Indian app store or something that is built in India, but there was a specific instance in March this year where Google had pulled down a lot of these apps, around 10 of very popular Indian apps, startup apps, something like a Bharat, Matrimony, Jeevan Sathi, and even Naukri.com were removed from the Google Play Store. So, and then later the IT ministry sprung into action, and those apps were restored within hours. So they were removed for some payment dues. So this acted like a sign. It was like a sign of caution for these new startups and Indian companies that Google, though it incorporates a lot of businesses, but it holds the reins. And if it wants to, it can really bring down hell on these smaller companies. So this is when the idea started gaining traction. Uh, Even before this, there were talks about Indian App Store, and even there was one store that was launched before this happened. But it gained even more traction when Google removed these apps. So, and also there's always been the case of taxation. Apps, these new apps have to pay a lot of tax when there's an in-app transaction. For instance, they pay around 15 to
That's right.
26%, which is pretty high. So from that regard, there's always been talk about it, but since March onwards, it's gained some ground, and
Right.
people at high places are talking about it even more.
That's right.
Right. But Danny, should the government be handling such application stores, or should it be open to the market is the next question. And already, have you seen any instance of any existing Indian player already in the app ecosystem who could be filling in that place?
Yeah, definitely. The first question, like either the government or private owned entity should be handling this. So I spoke to a few experts, and they told me that while a government led entity could have some benefits such as regulatory oversight and accessibility and even strategizing according to the country's economy. But at the other hand, there are problems such as like a slow moving bureaucracy or like slower innovation. So in their opinion, a privately held app store stands to perform better because it can be agile, and especially if it's about tech, they need to be very agile and make changes on the
That's
fly.
right.
So it's better if a privately owned brand can do that, but the government still needs to lay down the basic infrastructure for such a company to come forward, and it'll need a lot of cooperation from the government side as well. So there's no one side that can be involved; it has to be both. And yeah,
Okay.
there is an Indian brand that has already made its name in this field, the Indus App Store. It's an app store owned by PhonePe. So they
Okay.
launched in February, just weeks before Google had taken down the Indian apps.
Okay.
So they recorded around 1 lakh downloads in a matter of just 3 days. But the thing again is that Apple and Google are like the dominant players. And just to give some perspective, when Apple App Store was launched back in 2008 in July,
Yeah.
around 10 million downloads happened in a matter of 3 days, whereas this App Store only could get like 1 million downloads. But not to say that it's bad, but there's a very stiff competition for Indian companies right now, but the time is also right for them.
Okay, but with the coming of Gen AI and taking center stage, what will really happen? Will our reliance on such apps reduce in the future? Will we really need an app store if we look at the far future?
If you had asked me this question last year, I would have said that not much is going to change. But within this past year, there have been multiple companies that have come forward with alternatives, such as there are two US based companies, one is Rabbit and one is Humane. So they are trying to build smartphone alternatives without apps. So they are just AI in a small box, and you basically don't need apps to say call a cab or order food. You just have to tell it to your AI assistant that I need an Uber at this spot. It will book it for you. Now it's communicating with apps, no, I'm sure, but still, like the future seems a bit different from what we are experiencing right now. So while right now we are talking about app ecosystem, in like 5 years down the line, it might be something else altogether.
All right. Well, this sounds exciting and something that we will continue to keep an eye out on as well. Well, thank you, Danny, and thank you so much, Krishna, again for being with us on this special edition and sharing such wonderful insights from this newest edition for all our viewers. For all the viewers, please do go out there, grab your copies. It's already hit the stands. I'm sure this is something that will really interest you as consumers of e-commerce, as users of various apps, to really understand what is going to go, going forward from here, from these tech giants going forward from here too. Many thanks for being with us on this special edition. But do stay tuned, as always, Business Today Television will continue to bring you all the action from the world of business and finance even beyond this.